Good.
We are, I thought, getting ready for the class, but you know, we've been running pretty quickly, so what I like to do is just kind of do a quick overview, just kind of touch bases so that everybody know where we are, since we've had some that's kind of in and out or had conflicts. So, any questions or anything about what we've talked about up until now? Any questions, derogatory remarks, anything like that? What I'm looking at is trying to talk about grief, going through bereavement, going through some of the stages of grief, and also making an application to ourselves, but also equipping ourselves so that we can help others. Because sometimes that really is advantageous to the grief process, is if I can help somebody else.
That's true.
You know, sometimes as we go through things, we don't realize that we're accumulating experience. And sometimes experience can be very, very helpful, and we want to do that. And so what I like to do is just kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that we've talked about. Let me do a slideshow here. I'll start from the current slide, and then we'll go from there. And so we're looking at the idea of, when we talk about grief, we talked about the different stages. And this doesn't mean that every one of us are going to go through that particular stage, but at least we are familiar with what to kind of expect when we lose someone. Shock, we express emotions, and this can be very difficult sometimes for those of us who are not normal emotion people. You know, some of us get like keep a stiff upper lip, so to speak, you know, and we don't show any. But then all of a sudden we find ourselves crying or be overwhelmed with a flood of emotion. And sometimes they can kind of put us into a tailspin. And so when we talk about that, we also talk about sometimes we feel depressed and very lonely. No man is an island, and so our lives intertwine with one another. So, you know, I don't, before I got married, I think I could cook halfway decent, but I don't know if I can boil an egg now, you know, because, and so, you know, you wake up and you're waiting for breakfast to be served and finally dinner come around. You think, I need to go to McDonald's or something here because there's no room in the inn. And so we began to see that feeling of loneliness. I'm all by myself. We may experience physical symptoms of distress, lose my appetite, anxious, all those kind of things as a part of the loss that you and I go through. We may become panicky. We're talking to someone, a dear brother who lost his wife, or she's in a tough spot right now, and he said, "Ben, I didn't realize how much she did." So for us paying bills, keeping things, I mean, that's something. He worked and she worked, but she took care of that piece. And all of a sudden, when she became incapacitated, I don't even know if the light's going to get turned off. I don't even know how to get the idea. And so we become very panicky. Sometimes we look at the idea of there's a sense of guilt. I should have listened better. I should have been more sensitive. I should have. A good friend of mine, one of my mentors, has this cute little saying. He said, "One should not should on themselves." And that's kind of a unique play on words, but it's stuck. When you and I begin to say, "I should this, I should that," those are what's called parental terms. And so you and I now are kind of undermining ourselves so far as what I should have done. And based in that is greed and grief and hurt and pain. Sometimes we feel with anger and resentment. Why did God have to take my blank? Why am I going through it? And I resent that. I've been a faithful Christian. I remember driving all the way to St. Louis, Missouri with my brother going into a coma, just got back from Vietnam. And all of a sudden, boy, they called and said he's in the hospital. We don't know what's going on. So my wife and I just had one child. We drove straight to St. Louis, about a 12-hour flight, 12-hour drive. And I remember outside the room where he was not expected to make it, and I thought that was such a shock. I began to try to make a deal with the Lord. Lord, I continue preaching your message if you let him make it through tonight. And the Lord said no. And so that was not a happy feeling for me. You know, I'm one of your trusted servants. Sometimes there's resentment. We resist returning. Is it possible for life to go on after this person is gone? And sometimes when we begin to maybe start dating again, or when we begin to get develop more friendships, then all of a sudden I have this resistance, like I'm being unfaithful. I'm not being loyal. The very thought of that guy is kind of handsome, or that girl is kind of attractive. I beat myself up because of, again, I resist returning to a normal life, and that's a reality. We gradually, hope comes through. Hope begins to, like a bad storm, all of a sudden, you know, so dark, and next thing you know, the storm finally gives up, and you begin to see a little sunlight coming through, and that's what we're always looking for, that hope for tomorrow. And then we struggle to affirm reality. What is my reality now? What is it like that we've had friends that we talked to in the past, and they said, well, you know, it's awful difficult. I think I shared with you guys that a good friend of ours lost her husband 5 years ago, and we've been asking her to go out to dinner. And finally, about a month ago, she called and found out I was speaking at some place, and she said, I just want to know, is Robin going to be there also? And would you guys mind going out to dinner? We've gone by her house several times. We've actually stopped by there unannounced. But it was hard for her, and she made the statement at our time together. She said, do you realize it's been 5 years since he's been gone? Wow. And so this idea of struggling to affirm reality, we went to New York, the four of us, in New York doing the counseling, and out to New Mexico, down to Houston, all over the place, one of my mentors. And then all of a sudden now she's here by herself. Again, so just trying to confirm reality. When you look at this, and I'll move the pace here a little bit. When you begin to think of, where am I at here? I'm looking for page 24. Yeah, I just want to kind of go through and just, again, these are those states of shock, emotion, depressed, lonely, physical symptoms, panicky, and all those kinds of things began to happen. And we began to look at all of these things and ask ourselves, what is my normal life? And so when we're looking at this class for this next few weeks, we're looking at the idea, we know what the stages of grief are. But I love Bible study because it can tie us into something that's real in our lives, and that's the word of the Lord. And so from this until the end, we're looking at how do we somehow integrate the different stages and what we go through with the life of Job. All of us have read about Job, thought about Job, and so now we can use Job as kind of a mile marker, if you will, as we go through this particular event. We're talking about those particular cases. What does a normal life look like? Meanwhile, what is going on in the greater world? Sometimes when I'm over here in my grief, I lose sight that there's a big world out here. I'm in this little pocket right here, struggling with whatever, but there's a whole other world. And we see that in such an excellent way with Job. Job is talking about all that he's going through, but in the meantime, God is in heaven, and the angels are presenting themselves before him, and he's making decisions and whatnot, and he tells them, without consider my servant Job, and Job is absolutely unaware of all of this. So just because I'm going through grief, that doesn't mean that God is not working in my life and in the life and the events around me. That's something we want to keep in mind. And also, when there are no words to say. And this is probably one of the most uncomfortable spots for you and me to be in. When the grief becomes so heavy, I have no words to say. It's just so overwhelming. And sometimes, especially in America, as we want to put a voice to it. Sometimes there is no voice. The pain is so absolutely incredible that I have nothing to say. I can't say.